My guest today is Meintje Westerbeek. Meintje is the Manager of English as a Second Language Programs at Baltimore City Community College. She also serves on the Maryland Advisory Council for New Americans, which is a committee appointed by Governor Glendening. Welcome to Dreams in Action, Meintje.
Thank you.
I love that name. Am I pronouncing it correctly?
Yes,
Meintje.
very
Okay,
close.
Good. Well, how would you say it?
Meintje.
Meintje.
Yeah, to tell you the truth, I'm not even sure myself anymore what the correct pronunciation is. I've heard so many versions of it. But.
Okay. Well, give us a little bit of background information about yourself.
I'm an immigrant. I came this year exactly 25 years ago to the United States. Mine is a bit of a love story. I met my husband in Italy, who's American, and then we came here together, and I stayed here, and here I am in Baltimore 25 years later.
You live in Baltimore? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No regrets at all whatsoever?
Absolutely not. No,
was the adjustment
not.
a little bit difficult for you at first?
You know, I think for anyone who comes from another country and another culture, there's an adjustment. I mean, it's certainly much more severe for some people who you know, who don't speak the language, for example, or who come from a culture that's dramatically different from the American culture. But I think even if you come from Western Europe, which is where I'm from, you find that there are differences and adjustments you have to make and expectations that are different. So it's always a process that that everybody goes through, regardless of what country you're from.
Mm-hmm. So you're really truly an expert on immigration just because you've spent so many years at Baltimore City Community College working with ESL teachers. And how many ESL teachers report to you at the college?
Well, you know, over the years at Baltimore City Community College, we've served many people from many, many different countries. We probably have, since I've been there, helped maybe 11,000 students or so become, whatever level of proficiency in English through a variety of programs that we have. Over the last couple of years, the program has really grown dramatically. So I think we now have a staff of about 40 instructors that teach English as a second language for us, either on campus, where we have probably about 40 classes at one time, and of course at many of the off-campus sites we have throughout the state of Maryland.
Really, throughout the entire, not just up in the Baltimore area.
Right.
And this is probably something that Montgomery Community College offers, and some other community colleges. They all have ESL classes, English as a second language classes.
Right. Yeah. Our statewide program is really our citizenship program. Otherwise, English as a second language we offer in the Baltimore City, Baltimore County area, but not beyond that. But about a year ago, naturalization became a really important issue. Some of it was because there was some pressure on immigrants groups. There was legislation introduced that really wasn't particularly friendly towards immigrants, and also generally the immigrant community feels that they would like people to become citizens so people can start participating, people can start voting. There can be a real representation. So all of that together kind of formed a very strong force to get a citizenship program set up, and I've always worked very closely with the Maryland Office for New Americans, and I've served, as you said earlier, on the Maryland Advisory Council for New Americans. So that combination kind of helped to kick off this citizenship program, which, by the way, has as one of its primary foci the assistance to elderly learners. So elderly people who are looking to become citizens.
And they're actually put in the same classes with the regular students, right?
You
or
know,
do they have their own special classes that they take?
In many cases, we actually like to offer a special class to seniors. Many of the classes take place at senior centers. In fact, we work very closely with the Maryland Office on Aging to offer those classes in communities and places where the elderly are comfortable, where it's convenient to them. Also, some of the instruction is adapted to working with elderly. So altogether, I have to say that the majority of the elderly are in a class specifically designed for them. And it's wonderful. It's incredible.
Yeah. Help clarify a little bit for some of the people who are watching exactly what is an immigrant, a refugee, a political asylee. There's so many different categories, and I think it might be confusing to some people.
Yeah. I would say the main categories are immigrants and refugees. Immigrants are all those that are new coming to America. A relatively small percent of those, approximately 10%, are refugees. And refugees are people who leave their country because of political or religious persecution. So for that reason, they fall in a different category. And those are the primary categories for of immigration status, and of course that plays a role in how many years it takes to become a citizen, and some other programs that you are eligible for or not eligible for.
In terms of
depending on your
assistance
status.
Financially
Yes.
as a refugee?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. How long does it take to become a citizen if you do go through the English classes and through the whole process? How long does it take?
You know, in terms of learning the language, it can take many, many years. If you come to this country without knowing any English, and you may be somebody who's a little bit older and who maybe spends a lot of time in his or her community, you know, it can take 10 to 15 years to become proficient enough to pass the requirements for American citizenship. And those requirements are relatively high. People have to be able to read and write and speak and understand English. And it's kind of a loose definition, but it means that you know, you have to be able to meet those requirements. The time it takes, if we're only looking at the process itself in terms of the paperwork and the requirements for residency, people have to have been in America, have to have been a permanent resident in America, that is, for 4 years and 9 months. And then they can send in their application, and then they will be called for fingerprinting, and they'll be called for an interview. And the interview consists of demonstrating that you know about history and government, and so you are asked questions about that. You are asked to write a few sentences that are dictated. You are asked to read a small paragraph, and then of course you have to show that you understand English. And one of the things we concentrate on in our English program is to prepare people for that interview, because the language is tested in a variety of ways, not only in this formal way of write down a sentence, but also if the examiner says, are you comfortable, or you know, did you have trouble getting here? I mean, those are general communication questions, and people are you know,
You can't really practice for something like that.
Exactly.
It could catch you off guard.
Yeah.
And especially when people are under stress, they could be nervous.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. People who in other situations could do quite well are you know, under incredible pressure. I mean, this is such an important moment in their lives that they often fail simply out of nervousness. And so what we do in our classes is try to prepare people for that. Give them lots of these kinds of mock interviews, practice questions, also help them to strategize a little bit about how to handle an interview, when to ask for clarification when you don't understand, not just simply be quiet and hope that the next question will be easier, but to say, excuse me, I don't understand. Also with the elderly who often have hearing problems, we make a point of teaching them to say to the examiner, not I can't hear, but to say I have a, I sometimes have a problem hearing, could you please speak a little bit louder? All of that is sort of part of general communication and a way to manage an interview and not be overly intimidated by the process. And we're having good luck with it. So
I can't imagine going through that process on your own, without those types of classes. Might there also be publications or books that people can read to prepare for something like this?
Absolutely.
Are there things like that?
Yeah. The INS, in fact, the INS puts out some good publications. This is one of them, A Guide to Naturalization.
Is that Immigration and Naturalization Service?
Right. They also give a person 100 questions for history and government that they can study, just to have some basis for what they will ask. That's not the entire knowledge that's required, but that's a good kind of guideline for what people are asked to be able to do.
Are the questions difficult? Like the history questions, even those 100 questions? I mean, people joke all the time that Americans couldn't pass some of these questions.
I think that's absolutely true. You want me to give you one?
Oh, no, don't.
But no, they can be quite challenging. It's not only, how many stars are there on the flag or the colors of the flag. What's the cause of the Civil War, or, more complex questions too. And
that would be particularly stressful for the elderly.
Absolutely. Yeah. And people manage to do this. It's
what would you say is the most difficult obstacle for them to overcome in order to obtain that citizenship? What is the thing that stands in the way? It must be the English language.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And then within that, I would say, in our experience, writing is the most difficult part of it. The oral communication, people have lived here, most immigrants are employed, so they've worked in an English-speaking environment. That they can often handle. It's the writing that is very, very difficult. Many citizenship applicants come from experience of little education in their former country, little, maybe limited literacy in their native language. So here they are asked to become literate in a foreign language. It's an awesome task, it really is. But
what countries are you seeing students from primarily? Or, I'm sure it's from everywhere, but do you see a larger percentage from certain countries now?
It probably pretty much reflects the percentages in the state, I think. We have a lot of Spanish speakers, a good number of Korean students, but then also people from other countries. We have some people from Cambodia, Vietnam, Burma. We have people from Poland, Greece.
And various age groups too, like you said.
Various age groups, yeah. Our youngest is probably 18, actually, I think, and our oldest student is 97 years old. Mm-hmm. And
there have been some controversies about the possibility of cheating on citizenship tests. There was something on 2020. Is that true? Is that something that's been taken care of, or?
Yeah, the INS was a couple of years ago under pressure from the public to try to do something about the backlog and move people faster through the process, and the INS, in my opinion, did a very, credible attempt at changing some of their system, and part of the backlog was caused by these individual interviews and the testing, and so they looked to get some support from educational institutions and community centers to pick up some of that English proficiency testing and some of the history and government. I think what happened was that in some instances the test was administered by people who were not all that for one, they were not official educational institutions, and I think there was some cheating going on there, where there wasn't enough supervision. You would have 25 people sitting in one room, and so I think as a result, they felt that the test results were not necessarily valid. My personal opinion about that is that the test people get in these educational institutions and these community centers was a multiple choice test, mostly reading and listening, but not really speaking. And so I think when people can do quite well on that, and even people whose spoken English is not so good, they can often read, and if they've studied enough, they can really do well on a test like that. Then when they would go to the interview afterwards, the INS officer would be taken aback by the proficiency or lack thereof
Sure.
of the applicant, who then, for example, had a lot of trouble carrying on a simple conversation.
With regards to giving up your own country's citizenship, what are some of your students say to you? Is it, do they ask questions about the oath, or do they have trouble about that, or is it now becoming easier just because of the financial incentives to become a U.S. citizen?
I think many people struggle with the idea of giving up their own citizenship to take on another citizenship. Many countries do not accept dual citizenship. For those countries where dual citizenship is a possibility, of course, students do not abandon one for the other, so that makes it a little bit easier. Yet, it's a big step to swear off all foreign princes, and
Yes,
some of
that oath.
that's part of the oath. And I think that's something that is a process that people need to be prepared for. And in a sense, it's probably a good idea to require that permanent residency that is required of almost 5 years, that gives people enough time to learn the language, to feel comfortable in the culture, and to then feel that they want to be part of the country and the systems, and that they can vote. And so it's a bit of accepting that this other you, this other personality, is now permanently part of you, and citizenship is
And they
part
make
of
peace
that.
with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But yet some still decide not to become citizens.
Absolutely.
Is it because they don't want to remain here permanently, or what are some other reasons that you hear?
Well, I think you're right. Some don't want to stay here permanently. This is not something that's often talked about, but a good number of immigrants also return to their country, and that's always been the case throughout history, throughout the history of immigration. I don't know the percentages, but I know a solid percentage of Italians went back to Italy when there was, at the turn of the century, a large Italian immigrant population coming in. So there are those people that want to keep those ties to their own country, and other reasons I think are sort of a psychological nature, probably also some financial ones. I think if people have assets in their own country, they may be concerned
Sure.
that if they lose citizenship, that that those are threatened. So, I think those are some of the reasons why people decide not to become citizens.
And in certain cases also, a citizenship might not be granted if somebody's caught or in trouble with the law, or
Absolutely.
they're caught not paying their taxes.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. Any, not any. I'm not sure about the details of criminality versus other encounters with the law, but that's always a very, very problematic thing. And so, frankly, many people work with lawyers also to get all this all these issues resolved, but that's a small group of people that usually has that issue. Most of the people can complete on their own an application, and things are reasonably straightforward in most cases.
Mm-hmm. So if somebody would like to start taking classes, what would you recommend to them? What are some resources? Say they are willing to learn English, and their goal is to become a citizen. Would there be a step-by-step plan that you can recommend, or where would they go to get help?
I would recommend that people enroll themselves in English classes. start taking English as a second language classes early on and be consistent. It's so easy to say, oh, you know, I have already 2 jobs, and immigrants tend to work many, many jobs and work a lot and have, you know, are often overwhelmed by all the responsibilities that they have. And learning a language is a very slow process. It's not like learning word perfect or
Sure.
some kind of skill that you can master in a relatively little amount of time. But my recommendation is, and I know it from experience of people who stick with it, who are persistent, and we're talking about a couple of years of learning English, are basically preparing themselves for this. In addition, my recommendation is to enroll in a citizenship preparation class. We offer these classes, Baltimore City Community College does, but lots of other programs do too. So, you know, wherever you can find the closest citizenship preparation class, I think that is another piece to take care of, because it gives you practice and confidence that you need to get into those classes.
You seem so dedicated to this type of work. Why is this work so suitable for you? Besides the fact that you're an immigrant, obviously, but it still takes a dedication and a willingness to help people reach their dreams here. Why is the work so suitable for you?
Well, I think being an immigrant myself certainly gives me, you know, such a natural affinity for that feeling and that process of adopting this other culture and leaving your own culture partially behind, and that's not easy. And I've always been in education, and so I think that education too is so connected to that, helping people to sort of opening doors to people, and
That's exactly what you're doing.
That's a great thing. It's a great feeling,
feeling.
and it's
wonderful.
It's very rewarding.
You're helping people launch their dreams and giving them a chance in their new life in America.
Yep.
And thank you very much
Absolutely.
for your visit, Meintje.
Thank you.
This has been Meintje Westerbeek with the Baltimore City Community College.